Gordon Hayward is going to be a Celtic, but there's still unfinished business. And for that, we bring in our Ramona Shelburne, who has a story up on ESPN.com right now. All right, so plain and simple, what do the Celtics need to do to get his max contract under the cap here, Ramona?
Well, you know what they say about all good plans, right? Everybody assumed the salary cap was going to be one thing, but it was just a little bit short of where it was. And the Celtics have this complicated series of moves that they have to do, and it started by them renouncing the rights to Kelly Olynyk, but they have to renounce rights to 3 or 4 other players, then trade Terry Rozier, then they have so many moves they have to make just to get close to the max, and they still end up $300,000 short of being able to give Gordon Hayward his max. And so that means that they have been calling around the league over the past couple of days, ever since he sent word that he was going to go to Boston, saying, we've got to trade either Jay Crowder, Marcus Smart, or Avery Bradley, because those salaries are the ones that will help them get enough money to sign Gordon Hayward to his full max. Now, Gordon Hayward, of course, could take just a little haircut, could take $300,000 less and make this easy, but he sent word that he's not going to do that. He wants the full max. That's what he agreed upon. And so the Celtics have been calling every team in the league, finding out the best return they can get for those three players. That doesn't mean they're going to trade all 3. Probably they only really need to trade one of them. But the rest of the league now is in position to profit off of Boston's sort of misfortune, because the salary cap did not rise as much as expected.
Yeah, and all 3 of those guys, valuable pieces. Certainly Avery Bradley and Jay Crowder, and you got Marcus Smart, who would be coming off the bench. How might this affect the Utah Jazz, if in any way?
Well, that's a good question, because the Jazz are calling Boston saying, hey, listen, you know, we would rather get something for Gordon Hayward than lose him altogether for nothing. And so the Jazz have tried to engage the Celtics on sign-and-trade conversations for Jay Crowder. Now, Jay Crowder, of the 3 players I mentioned, is probably the odd man out, because Gordon Hayward plays small forward. Jason Tatum plays small forward. That's the guy they just drafted number 3 overall. The guy they drafted 3rd overall last year, he's a small forward as well. Obviously, Jaylen Brown's small forward. So Jay Crowder's probably the odd man out there. And the Jazz are saying, you know, if we can do a sign and trade for Gordon Hayward, send back Jay Crowder, that would solve all of your problems, and it'd be a nice farewell gift to the fans in Utah and to the organization in Utah that you wrote so eloquently about in that letter to the Players Tribune that you care so much about. Now, the Celtics, of course, say, well, maybe we can get something more for Jay Crowder than just salary cap relief, than just being able to make this trade here. And so that's the way this plays out as we go forward. If Boston gets something they like for either Jay Crowder or Marcus Smart or Avery Bradley, and that's going to take a lot, obviously those are key rotational players, then I think they make one of those deals and say, sorry, Utah, we're not going to do that sign and trade.
All right. So it's not done yet. We'll see how that all plays out. Let's go to West. Nick Young moving north to the Warriors. I know you've covered Nick for a long time. You surprised he was recruited by the Warriors and welcomed with such open arms?
You know, I guess initially I was. I've covered Nick since high school, so you see this open arms picture. Like, I love that Kevin Durant tweeted this and forgot that he actually missed the shot, right? But Nick actually had a lot of suitors. I mean, New Orleans Pelicans were after him. The San Antonio Spurs had some interest. There's a lot of teams that are actually after Nick Young because of the way he shoots the ball, and also, quite frankly, because of the year he had playing for Luke Walton with the Lakers last year. I mean, he was a player last year where you were surprised that he was even on the team. There was talk they might waive him, that he might not even be brought back. 1, he makes the team. 2, he ends up starting and has a career year for Luke Walton. So it's not all that surprising that Alvin Gentry, the coach of the Pelicans, really wanted to get him for that system, believing he would have so many open shots playing with Boogie and Anthony Davis. But the Golden State Warriors saw the same thing and said, you know, Luke, do you think he would fit in this kind of culture? And I spoke to Nick throughout his recruiting process, and he said, you know, the chance to win, the chance to change his reputation, the chance to be this year's JaVale McGee was too much to pass up, and that's why he's a Warrior today. All
right. You mentioned JaVale McGee, so I'm going to go there. The Clippers met with McGee. They also met with Derrick Rose yesterday. What do we know about that, Ramona?
Well, I think both. I don't see either of those guys signing with the Clippers. I think JaVale is probably going back to the Warriors, but he wants to see what else is out there for him and what kind of money other teams are going to pay him. So he's doing what a lot of free agents right now are doing, is trying to set their own market and not just return to their teams on minimum deals. Derrick Rose is really interesting because in New York, I think that the Knicks obviously were sitting back and trying to decide if they wanted to make a big offer to Dion Waiters. Well, now that Dion Waiters goes back to Miami, the Knicks then are in a position where they could bring back Derrick Rose, and I know there had been some interest in that beforehand at the right number. The Knicks obviously are going young. They don't want to take back older players. They don't want to take back players that are going to have long-term contract encumbrance. That they want to go. That was the plan before Phil Jackson was fired. I think it's still the plan now. And Derrick Rose is that veteran point guard who can mentor their rookie point guard. They drafted 8th overall. And I think the path now is there for him to return. He also, though, has interest from the Lakers, obviously the Clippers. He met with them, and some other teams around the league. But Dion Waiters taking that money from Miami made that money in New York available for Derrick Rose.
Very interesting. Domino's still falling in the NBA. Ramona Shelburne.
That's how it works.
It's still going. It's still clicking along pretty good. Ramona here with us, giving us some thoughts on what's happening. And we continue on with the NBA. Right now on ESPN.com, Ian Begley has an article on trade scenarios that could lead to how Carmelo Anthony can escape the Knicks. Escape. Get out of town. And we bring in Ian and Bobby Marks, who's worked on this as well. All right, so Ian, we'll start with you. Where do we stand in the Knicks-Melo saga as far as him being traded?
Members of the Knicks organization still feel that the best route for them going forward is to trade Carmelo. You know, I'm told that talks with the Knicks and other teams and potentially third teams have been on and off recently, but the goal among most in that Knicks organization right now is to continue to pursue a Carmelo trade, a deal that is not easy to pull off, as Bobby can tell you.
Well, you're right, Ian. It's going to be really difficult. I think where you look at his contract right now, $26 million and $27 million owed. We haven't even talked about that 8.1 trade kicker, and I think it depends on if Carmelo Anthony wants to expand the list of teams right now. We talked about Cleveland. We talked about Houston, but, Ian, I talked to 3 teams, and all 3 teams told me that if Carmelo Anthony was on the open market right now, they would not sign him to the price tag he is currently under.
So he's not basically worth the money at this point in his career. All right, so as you guys mentioned, Houston and Cleveland are the 2 places that Melo has basically gone on record as saying he'd be willing to go there and waive his no-trade clause. Ian, lay it out for me. How would a trade with the Rockets work?
You know, Ryan Anderson is the biggest piece for Houston, and the Knicks and the Rockets had talked about a deal involving Ryan Anderson, and as of late last week, the Knicks did not have interest in bringing Ryan back, and that's why you would probably have to bring in a third team here, a third team that would take Ryan Anderson from the Rockets, and that would allow, you know, Trevor Ariza and some of the Rockets' non-guaranteed contracts to be sent to New York for Carmelo. You know, Trevor Ariza entering the final year of his current contract, so that would open up cap space for the Knicks next summer, but they wouldn't get any significant pieces that help them now in return in that iteration of the deal.
That's what makes this whole thing so difficult for the Knicks to pull off a trade. What about, Bobby, for the Cavs? A potential trade with Cleveland, how would that have to work?
Well, we've heard the name Kevin Love, and we can probably go down that road if both sides want to. I just don't see where it's a fit for New York. If you look at how their roster is, are we willing to put Kristaps Porzingis at the 5, and now you put Kevin Love at the 4? What do you do with Joakim Noah and Willie Herron-Gomez? And then when you look at Cleveland there, is it the LeBron James era at power forward? And I just find it difficult for both teams kind of matching up, and that's why we probably need to get a third team involved. And as you've seen, this market is drying up right now. There are not a lot of teams that are in need of a power forward. One team that might is Atlanta, but new general manager Travis Schlenk has certainly identified that team is certainly in a rebuild.
All right, so if it sounds like trades are hard to do with Carmelo Anthony and his contract, what other options would there be here, Ian?
You know, there's always the buyout option here, and that's something that the Knicks, you know, to date have been reluctant to discuss with Carmelo's people. You know, they're pretty adamant that they want to get assets back in any Carmelo Anthony transaction. They've been down the road of letting high-salary players go for nothing in the past. with Amari Stoudemire most recently. They don't want to do that again. Phil Jackson didn't want to do that again. I don't think Steve Mills wants to go that route. But they could change course. And if they did, if they did agree to a buyout with Anthony, and let's say he took some less money than the $54 million he is owed, the Knicks could stretch that out across 5 seasons, and it would free up some salary cap space for the Knicks in the next 2 summers, but it would also keep a lot of money on the Knicks' books in the 3 summers after that, after they would have gotten out of Carmelo Anthony's deal had they not done the buyout.
All right, so the Knicks are right now kind of stuck a little bit with Carmelo Anthony. We'll see if there's any movement moving forward. We got Ian Begley and Bobby Marks on the story here on Coast to Coast.